Hey, welcome to KUAM's Decision 2014. I'm Jess Lujan, your host for, of course, the Candidate Buzz. We continue our conversations, of course, with the folks running for political office. And, of course, our elected officials, not necessarily political, because this office, actually, the Attorney General, is a non-political, non-partisan office as well. So the incumbent Attorney General, of course, Lenny Rapadas, is in here this morning to talk to us about his plans should the people of Guam again decide to re-elect him to the office again to retain the seat of the Attorney General of Guam. Good morning, Attorney General. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning, senor. Good. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Just had to run in from a conference that we're doing over the next couple of days. It's actually an identity theft conference that we're running with the FBI, law enforcement. Law Enforcement Education Development Association.
And I know you're off to, of course, a court hearing as well today, an appeals hearing today in regards to, again, voting rights.
Right, voting rights. Right is the
indigenous voting rights.
Right.
Okay.
The one that Senator Pangilinan Defunto has been championing.
Sure. And this, of course, the Dave Davis versus Government of Guam. Is that what it is?
The Election Commission.
Election Commission. Right. Okay. I'd like to introduce the producer of my show, of course, Keen J.C. Conception here this morning. And Attorney General, again, thank you very much for coming in this morning. Go ahead and tell the people of Guam again who you are. Not that they don't already know, but again, and your platform for again, should the people of Guam again elect you to re-elect you to the seat that you're holding right now.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Lenny Rapadas. I am the sitting Attorney General. I've been the Attorney General for the last 3.5 years. I'm running again for re-election to be the Attorney General for another 4 years. We've done a lot over the last 3.5 years. We've from top to bottom from each of our divisions. As soon as I got in, one of the things I wanted to do was make sure that I go through and examine each division and see how we can better things, and that's essentially what I did from the very beginning. So starting with the criminal division, started going through all the procedures and some of the things that I knew back then when I was an assistant. I knew what worked and so forth. And one of the things that stuck out to me was that we need to make sure that we retain good lawyers, and we've done that over the last 3.5 years. We've hired good lawyers, and we've made sure that we keep them in the office. And one of the things that does that is as government attorneys, we're not we don't make as much money as any private attorney. So I admire the AAGs in my office that stay on board for years and years at a time to serve the people, because they don't make a lot of money. They do it because they want to serve the people. So one of the things that we try to do is get them more training. So that's one of the things we try to get them more training. We brought out top lawyers, top prosecutors from the nation to get them the training they need. Of course, we do have some good, smart lawyers also anyway. And one of the things that really came to fore also was our victim advocate section. Our victim advocates are federally funded, and one of the things that we need to do is make sure that they are permanently funded and locally funded, so that they maintain and stay in the office. One of the things I don't want to happen is at the whim, we may lose 2 or 3 advocates at the whim of the federal government. So we're looking to make them permanent. Within our office. So that's the thing we're trying to do with our victim witness advocates. They're one of the front lines with the victims.
And thank you for clarifying some of the things that come to mind as well. And I remember serving in the 27th Guam legislature when the first elected Attorney General got into office back then, because the Organic Act had to be amended in order to allow that to happen and allow your office to be elected.
Yes.
Okay. Now let me ask you this, because you continue to face hardships in regards to again the pay ranges. Now that being said, not only pay range, you say your Attorney General, assistant Attorney Generals there don't get quite the high pay and maybe what they're worth. Okay, that being said as well, I mean when folks lawyers newly graduate and again take their bar and they're admitted into the Guam bar, and some people just want to be government attorneys. I mean, some of them are
Sure.
destined to that. Is that a disadvantage to the office again, the Attorney General's office, because maybe you have a new graduate versus going up against maybe defense attorneys who are seasoned and really high paid and things like that, and they have again the mechanics to be able to get the work done, to defend their client as best possible. Not to say that your office doesn't defend them the best as possible, but we understand again over the years that you guys are stretched. I mean, one assistant attorney can be taking on hundreds of cases.
Yes.
And so is that a disadvantage? Is that maybe one of the reasons why plea agreements happen?
No, that plea agreements, the majority of the cases in Guam, like any other place, the statistics are essentially the same. That many, if not, well, the majority of cases, 95% of the cases in Guam and also the United States and other places that have similar systems get pled out through a plea agreement. Most of the time, it's that's just how it's done. So we do that, but at the same time, when we do that, we try to make sure, we always make sure that the victims are taken into account, and that restitution is made available to the victims if there are any actual victims in the case, and so that's just how it happens. And the few cases that are contested are the ones that go to trial, and they're generally the more serious cases. You've seen it over the last 4, 5, 6, almost a year now. My office has been going to trial on a daily basis. There will be weeks when we'll be having 4 to 5 trials going on at the same time, and a lot of people forget that or don't know that when DeSoto was going on, that wasn't the only case that was going on. We still had 3 or 4 other trials going on at the same time, and while we were
probably the same attorneys,
same attorneys,
arguing the other cases as well.
Yeah, and while that was going on, we were getting convictions during DeSoto. So there was, these are things that happen all the time. Over the last 2 years, 2.5 years, we've seen a great increase in the number of trials, and we've got a great team there that's managing all of this. We've never seen it before, and it's amazing how. And you talked about you asked about the lawyers in the office and being stretched out and so forth. What I'm constantly amazed at is the esprit de corps and the teamwork that occurs down in the prosecution office. And I see that in the other divisions too, but it's much more in the limelight when you're talking about prosecution. We have prosecutors who will go into trial, and for whatever reason there may be family emergencies and in a serious case, and they have to leave. Well, guess what? We have an attorney that's ready to step in. Investigators who need to go off somewhere for whatever reason, again, emergencies, people step in. I've had attorneys who will be finishing a closing argument in the morning and in the afternoon running into another court, maybe even the same court, to do an opening statements or jury selection in another trial, all serious cases. So, and all attorneys from the serious felony cases, the murder cases, to the DUI cases, they're stepping up and really more than pulling their weight.
Now, this question as well, and I'm sure you've heard the critics say, again, they seem to think that sometimes the Office of the Attorney General overcharges people, and not necessarily just the Attorney General of Guam, but we've seen national cases, the Trayvon Martin case, where they have, I think it's an elected prosecutor. Now,
I think the Duke rape case years ago.
Now, because your position is elected now, the Attorney General, not just yours, but previous Attorney Generals as well, and the Attorney Generals to come next as well. Now, did we, in the unintended consequences of having elected offices, now, you're asking people for the votes, okay?
Right.
Now, does the office again? I mean, based on you've got to get elected to maintain your job, And so how much of the public's input or criticism on the office that maybe a prosecutor or attorney general may succumb to maybe an overcharging, again, as we read nationally, when some cases, and you've heard, and then you see a non-conviction, the critics, lawyers, and maybe others, attorney general, even judges, maybe retired judges, that criticize. Well, I think they were quick to judgment, quick to again charge, and as a result of that, they've overcharged again some of these people who were accused. Your take on that?
The first thing I want to say is that when it comes to asking for votes, I'm only doing it once every 4 years.
Sure.
I'm not asking for votes during the other times, and that isn't even that question isn't even a blip in my mind when it comes to prosecuting cases. People have to understand that as a prosecutor, you look at all of the evidence in front of you. You look at the evidence that you, in good faith, can come in and will come into a case, and see what charge that those facts will support. And that's essentially what I ask of my prosecutors. I tell them, look, don't even take into account what the ninth floor is thinking about. You prosecute your cases like any other case. You look at all the facts and you charge the highest supportable charge that you can, and all of the other charges that you can support with the facts. And very simple. That's it. They do not come to me. They do not ask me, should I or shouldn't I? The only time that any case ever comes up to me is if there's a conflict. I mean, if there's some kind of
and they've got to recuse themselves,
and that they have to recuse themselves, or I may have to recuse myself, and then there are procedures for that.
Sure.
But that division is a division that is well managed. I make sure that my managers are handling and taking care of the cases and the personnel as we go on. Election seasons, voting never comes into account whenever we're dealing with the
Okay, you just clarified some of the things that I asked, and you said you tell your prosecutors to see what the highest conviction you can get based on the evidence that has been gathered, that has been given
the most serious crime.
The most serious crime,
that you can charge.
That being said, I guess a perfect example of that, I guess, is your latest conviction, basically, of the Hurilao Gagarita case, where actually your prosecutor was arguing the case, wanted to get a murder conviction, but instead the jury came back of not guilty of murder, but of manslaughter.
Right.
So you based on the evidence, you can argue the case for murder, but you also put that if it's not murder, well, here are the other things that they can be charged with, right? Is that how that works?
Right. If it's a lesser included offense, then we generally won't charge that, because that's included in the upper charge. If it's a case, if it's a charge that requires different facts, then we will formally put that in the charge, and as long as the facts support that, and that's how it goes. But any case, no matter how strong you think it is as a prosecutor, you just don't know. You never know. You try to put forward the best evidence you can. Many times you'll have defense attorneys making motions to keep certain pieces of evidence out, and sometimes you get judges agreeing, and maybe that's a piece of evidence that the jurors want to see, and it's very, to me, valuable when we speak to jurors about what their thoughts were about the case, the presentation, the prosecutor, the defense attorney, how the case was handled. What do you think? What should we have done? What could we have done? Because when you look at a case, you have this much evidence, but what may actually get in is this much evidence. So there are so many things that can go into a case that may or may not be relevant, and so we as prosecutors risk relevancy arguments, duplicative evidence. If it's something's repetitive, those are things that we can't that sometimes will be kept out. I mean, if we have an eyewitness who saw something, we may put another eyewitness on, but the judge may think, well, you've already got that evidence. But we generally try to argue, Your Honor, this is our case. We get to present the case as we want, as we would, it's our discretion,
Sure.
but sometimes
Yeah.
they pull that back.
Now, as lay people here, and Keen and I sometimes we think we're lawyers in here. Every once in a while, and sometimes what we call really comes to fruition. So I think we're going to be opening our office here in a couple of weeks. But anyway,
Okay, what are you gonna
all kidding
call
aside, all kidding aside. But anyway, let me ask you this. I mean, how does that work within the AG's office, right? I mean, if you have a man, you have a champion of a defense attorney. If you have a guy who's I mean, he's he's known to winning these kind of cases. How do you decide again which attorney can will argue this case or represent the people versus is it like again in a team, right? When you say, oh man, we're up against this quarterback, let's see who can sack this quarterback.
Right.
I mean, how does that work in there? I mean you're going to have to put up your best game as well, right?
Well, we that's something that we think about, but you know what? We have so many cases that it's difficult to
you
really,
don't have time to do that.
really make placements, and the way how the division works
Sure.
is that we have certain prosecutors assigned certain types of cases, and we have junior attorneys in each of those divisions, like for violent crime,
Sure.
or for DUIs, or for thefts, property cases. We have the senior attorneys, and then we have the junior attorneys in there. We also have one of the things that I did when I got in was we set up a mentoring system,
Yeah.
where there's a formal instruction within the
Sure.
within the office on certain aspects of cases, how to handle certain cases. That's why we're doing this
Okay.
this identity theft
Sure,
case
sure.
for our property and our theft lawyers. We want to make sure that they're kept up on
Sure,
the latest
sure.
on prosecution techniques. So that's what's happening right now. So we want to make sure that they're mentored. The junior attorneys are mentored. So, and also what we try to do is if we can afford it, put 2 attorneys on a case. We'll put the senior attorney on the case, then we'll also have the junior attorney working the case. Couple reasons. Again, if we lose one of the attorneys for emergencies reasons, we still have an attorney working that case, and there's no delay in moving forward. And the other reason is we want to get the training for that junior attorney. There, I've since I started back in the late 80s, early 90s. I've always seen, I see that all the time. You see the seasoned defense attorney, maybe a former prosecutor, get a hold of a case where they know a junior attorney or a fresh out of law school attorney is handling, and they go after this attorney.
Sure.
The advantage we have is that this young attorney can go straight to the mentors. They can go straight to the senior attorneys and say, "What's up with this? What's up with this defense attorney? Who is this? What does he do?" And get some ways on how to deal with this.
And I guess in general, you can look at it as you're going in there. You're as a general attorney, general practitioner, and you're versed in every aspect. I mean, you may study and you're more of a civil litigant at this point. But then when you get into the Attorney General's office, you said you have a mentoring program that they can probably take on criminal cases as well and be versed in that. So
our attorneys. They're given some rope and a safety line essentially, and at some point that safety line is cut. But they still get an experienced attorney who will go to a more experienced attorney.
Okay.
And frankly, the other times when I ever see an attorney, a prosecutor in my office is when we staff a case. I want to get back in court. I mean, I'm a trial attorney, and I really miss being in court in front of a judge, arguing a case in front of a jury, and so I sit there and I strategize with these people, and at this point there aren't very many other AGs that can do that, and I strategize and we talk about things, and when I see the attorney, the prosecutor use a line that I suggested, I feel good inside because I feel like I'm there, and. But man, I miss being in court, and so those are the only times I ever discuss a case is how do we get this done? So
now one other question here, because I think the people of Guam as well are confused. Is this part of the unintended consequence of of again, where this office was once an appointed position by the sitting administration, okay, versus an elected position now, because the two cases that come to mind, and maybe you can't talk about them at this point. Of course, the landfill issue, okay, landfill.
Okay, right.
Likewise, I think the gaming device issue at this point now. Now, there's argument as whether the Attorney General, your office, represents the people of Guam, the government of Guam, or the particular agency that you're working for at the time.
Right.
Who are you the attorney of?
We have to start at the very beginning
Okay.
of any case, and
Okay.
I can't talk about
Sure.
either of those
Sure.
cases because well, the
Sure.
landfill case, it was a case that kind of started when I was U.S. Attorney,
Mhm.
and it was also a case started when Alicia was the AG.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
we actually both can't talk about
Sure,
this case,
sure.
And it has been taken over by our civil division.
Mhm.
The gambling case, that's an ongoing
Mm-hmm.
litigation right now. There's some court
Sure,
hearings that need
sure.
to occur with that. So that's ongoing at this point. But generally, at the very beginning, we kind of look at who the parties are. And as a general matter, we represent agencies,
Mhm,
Guam
mhm,
agencies.
mhm.
And many times we'll have an assistant attorney general
Mhm, mhm.
sitting in the office itself. And
Mhm.
something that's more of something I'd like
Sure.
to happen, but we don't have the resources for that. 'Cause that provides consistency of action, consistency of policy
Mhm,
that
mhm.
you can't beat.
Sure.
It's difficult, but if we had the resources, we could do that.
Mhm.
But if an agency, from the very beginning, we
Mhm.
will be representing an agency.
So okay, and I know you're watching your words because of the ongoing case, but let me understand this. So, if an agency or a division of an agency comes under receivership, right? Okay, are they still an agency? And so, are you still then the attorney for that agency, for that division of the agency? Are they still now an agency that you represent them?
Well, first of all, you still have to go back again. I mean, why did it get to
What-
that point?
sure,
How did
sure,
it get
sure,
to that point?
sure,
So there may
sure.
have been negotiations. There may have been attempted consent decrees. Those sorts of things that occurred in the meantime.
Sure,
and
sure.
and so, the AG's office would have been involved in some of those talks, some of those
Mhm, mhm,
negotiations. And at some point, if there's an impasse and it has to happen, I can imagine. I can imagine that there have been lawsuits filed and so forth, and the AG's office would have been involved.
Mhm, mhm.
But when you get into a situation where there is a receivership, again, we need to again look at unless the office itself
Mhm.
was kicked out
Mhm.
because of a conflict
Sure,
and so
sure.
forth, and I don't generally see conflicts like that. We'll still be in it.
Mhm,
I mean,
mhm.
the AG's office will still be in it. It's always in a situation where the tough situation is where you have conflicts with your client.
Mhm.
And if, as a lawyer, you feel that your client, the
Mhm.
agency, is not acting in the best interest of the people,
Mhm.
because that's one of my missions.
Mhm, mhm.
AG's offices around the nation, most, if not all, AG's
Mhm.
offices are interesting animals.
Sure,
We are
sure.
different than your basic law
Mhm,
firm,
mhm.
that private law firm out
Mhm.
there. We represent not only agencies.
Sure, sure.
In our case, we represent
Mhm.
the mayor's council.
sure.
We can represent the governor,
Mhm.
the legislature,
Mhm.
and judicial officers in certain circumstances. But so we have as lawyers, we have our ethical rules that we
Mhm,
also have
mhm. Sure.
to have to follow. So when there is an ethical conflict, because we are the Attorney General's office, those different rules come into play because we're different. We're also different because part of my mission and mandate
Mhm.
under our statute, and this is the same for a good majority of AG's offices,
Mhm.
is that we also protect the public interest.
Sure.
And if it's not in the public interest for our client to take a certain action
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
that's what they want to do,
Sure.
then depending on the circumstances, we may
Mhm.
have to get out of that get out of that case.
Yeah. Another case that is ongoing, and I'm sure you won't be able to comment on that, but another that's kind of confusing, at least in my mind, involves the ancestral lands, where you have a lawsuit. You have about 60-some families, I think it is, and we've talked about it here, where are suing, of course, to get the compensation for, I think it's the Tejan property. But then the ancestral lands came out and sued and says, well, wait a minute, because ancestral lands are for all these displaced people. And so basically, I think if I'm not mistaken, the lawsuit entails that about 60-some families are claiming about 90% of the assets of about 2,000 folks. What kind of predicament did the AG get in? Because they're both, I mean, you got 62 families that represent the people of Guam, and then you have the trust, right? Which, again, yeah, 2,000 families. So how do you decipher which side? Because I know at one point, I think it was prior to even you being elected AG, that the AG was representing, I think, the 62 families. But when you look at it, in essence, holistically, you look at the case, it's like, oh.
Why do you ask me questions I can't answer? I cannot answer.
Well, because I'm trying to clear up the confusion.
Because these are the hard ones, right?
Yeah.
Well, again, we need to look at the whole thing.
Sure.
The office generally looks at. I mean, I can't speak to it from the very beginning
Sure,
because I wasn't
sure.
there. But we have to look at the whole thing. We have to look at statutes.
Mhm.
We have to look at present statutes. We have to look at statutes that are enacted as it's going. It is complicated,
Mhm.
and lucky for the office, we have a number of good civil attorneys.
Mhm.
And that's the other part of this equation is not only do we have the prosecution, we also have civil attorneys that are well versed in a number of things. So land issues is something that they will get on. Procurement.
Mhm.
Procurement is another issue that I have a actual unit within
Sure.
that deal with nothing but with procurement
Mhm,
issues.
mhm.
So it's one of those things that it's all hands. It's very rare that we have one attorney handling a large piece of something by him or herself. We'll have a team of attorneys working it. So in that particular case, again, I can't really speak to it specifically, but everyone will be examining it, and we will attempt to, and this is what we try to do, is reconcile the laws, the conflicting laws, because that's essentially what we need to do is reconcile conflicting laws.
Yeah.
And if they're truly conflicts, then they're things that may just have to go to court and let a judge decide. Some issues we will alert legislatures if they need to correct things or change things, but that's part of the many things that this office does.
One other thing, let me ask you before we have to say goodbye, and I know you got to get to the court as well. You got a 10 o'clock hearing, but let me ask you this: the people of Guam are going to this general election are going to have the opportunity to vote whether or not medicinal marijuana will be something that they desire to have here in Guam. It's all been settled now, so it'll be a simple majority. It won't be subjected to this office amendment and blank ballots and things of that nature. So the Department of Public Health and Social Service will be tasked with policies, procedures. I think they have 9 months from the law passing to be able to again put the policies in place. But I'm saying, well, wait a minute. The AG's office got to be involved. Law enforcement has to be involved in this. And again, what needs to happen should this occur? You guys need to be drug in here into this situation here, because it can't just be somebody who's again inspecting restaurants right now, giving them an A rating to say, hey, now you're designated to see these areas. I mean, it'll have to be its own division within the Department of Public Health and Social Services, working closely hand in hand with the Attorney General's office.
When I came out with my position on this issue, I mean it's moved. I mean it's something that's going to go forward anyway. I was looking from a law enforcement standpoint, and we're just going to have to wait till after the elections to see what happens and where it goes. Whether or not the agencies are able to, public health is able to pick up the ball and run with it, that's to be seen.
Yeah.
There are issues in in all of the areas,
Sure.
law enforcement,
Sure.
in
Courts,
social services,
yeah,
the
social
courts,
services,
on how to deal with
Sure.
that everyone's going to have to pick up the ball. My
Sure.
office is going to have to pick up the ball. We're going to have to reconcile the fact that we may have a conflicting local law with federal law,
Mhm.
and do we stop sending cases to the U.S. Attorney's Office if it's a marijuana case?
Yeah.
I do know that publicly the federal government, the Obama administration, has said that they're not going to be as harsh with marijuana.
Yeah, there we go.
They're going to leave it to the state, so that may end up being in our court, and that's it's a fight that, and I always look forward to a fight, but I want to make sure that it's a good, clean fight, and that everyone is working together for. I mean, ultimately, I think the idea for this is to relieve pain and suffering.
Sure.
And people who propose it, I think are well intentioned, but there are you've said it many times. There are unintended consequences, and the unintended consequences that I tend to bring up are kids are going to get into it. And if you look at Colorado, if you look at Washington, those things are coming into fruition. You're getting an increase of homeless from out of state moving into those states just because they can smoke dope freely.
Now, when you say, of course, the Obama administration said they're leaving up to the state, have let state law dictate what what their state law is going to be. Now, my thing here is this: when are we consider state versus not? I mean, state law in regards to medicinal marijuana versus, as of late, the Obama administration said that the Obamacare does not apply to Guam because we're not a state. So when are we a state and when are we not?
It depends on
Who's saying it?
maybe who says it, but if it's said in the statute, if it's said in the federal statute, that I mean, it's really you need to go back further and further until you get maybe to the original drafter of the statute, which might have been in 1844 or whatever.
When it was written, on a napkin.
Right. I mean, you have to follow it, and that's what lawyers do. That's why a lot of us wear glasses now, and so we just need to follow it. At some point, Guam may have been defined as a state because states includes territories, and there's 50 states or contiguous states and Hawaii. Or maybe they pull out and say Guam is not included in the definition. So you have to follow that.
So my last question: did you inhale? No, I'm just kidding.
I'm inhaling right now.
Inhaling right now.
I'm taking a deep breath because I got to go run to the district
There we
court.
go. I tell you, thank you very much again for coming. But go ahead, tell the people of Guam again your name and what you plan to do again. Should the people of Guam continue to keep you in that office come actually November? You're going to advance to November, right? Regardless
of what happens, right? But I still
why is that?
well, that's under our statute. But I've questioned it myself. But the thing is, we need. There may be write-ins that will come in, so at least if a write-in comes in, then the statute says that the top two goes in. Will go in. So, and that's why we had the primary. So, but we do need people, no matter what. Even though it looks like that both of us are going to be going into the general, we still need people to come out and vote anyway. So, my name is Leonardo Rapadas. I am number 1 on the ballot for Attorney General. I've had 3.5 good years working as your Attorney General. I've built up the office. The office is running as smoothly as it can, and we still have a lot to do. We're still out there. We're still listening to you, the people of Guam, to make the office a smoother and better office to better serve you and to better serve the interest of you.
And let me just say again, for the Attorney General's election for that office, it doesn't matter what side of the ballot you vote, whether you're voting for a Democrat or Republican. It's a nonpartisan vote, so your ballot won't be discarded because you turned over and you voted for either one of the candidates, because it's a nonpartisan. So it's not a matter of crossing. It's a totally separate election, nonpartisan, either Democrat or Republican. And I think the both of you go to both meetings.
Yes, we do.
But anyway, thank you very much, and good luck to you.
Thank you very much.
Well, you're going to advance from Saturday, but on to the general
right.
election. But anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You can watch this again tonight on Local 2 at 7:30. Likewise, it'll be on our KUAM YouTube channel about 10:30, 11 o'clock this morning. And again, rebroadcast tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. on KUAM TV 8. 2 p.m. again, KUAM TV 8. And of course, we are simulcast here, live here on Isla 63. And tomorrow morning, joining us in studio will be the team of Gutierrez Gumatalto, Democratic team, former Governor Gutierrez, again candidate for governor, and likewise Attorney Gary Gumatalto will be in studio, the Democratic team for the gubernatorial election, of course, this coming Saturday, and also looking like they're going to be advancing to November as well. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Attorney General. Thank you very much.